Welcome to the Token Map, your trusty guide for tokens, contracts, and identity in the exciting world of blockchains. If you're new to blockchains, aka distributed ledgers, or even have been immersed in them for years, you may find yourself helplessly confused or lost in the deep dark woods. You may be asking yourself, what's this all about? And what was I trying to do in the first place? If so, the Token Map is for you. Here we take a step back, or zoom out, if you will, to reevaluate the big picture. What makes blockchain seem so interestingly magical to some and often dismissed by others? Previous papers in the Bletchley series provide an introduction and guide for you to grasp the basic concepts involved when approaching blockchains. So we'll not dip into the whole distributed consensus algorithms burrow, nor will we debate varying approaches to achieving some usable level of privacy. But often those who are immersed in experiments or proof of concept projects come up for air and ask themselves, couldn't I have just used a traditional database for this? Is what I'm trying to do even a valid use case for blockchains? And shouldn't the previous question be, is what we are trying to do a valid use case for blockchains? So this map will bring you back to the basics and help guide your thinking and approach to true multi-party distributed applications using blockchain technologies. Bit of level setting here for our first topic, tokens. There are currently two token universes at the moment. A public universe heavily tilted toward cryptocurrency use cases that features a diverse and wide selection of blockchain choices, each of them differentiating themselves on the technical underpinnings and evolving of new economic models, and an enterprise or corporate universe that provides a narrower choice of blockchain technologies, focusing on evolving existing economic models with a more diverse and wide view of tokens. At some point, the boundary between these two universes, public and private, will blur as the technology and social, economic, legal, regulatory, and practical aspects involved with this disruptive technology matures. But for now, it's pretty safe to think that the use of tokens in the public universe is narrowly focused on different versions of money or cryptocurrency, and the private universe is widely focused on tokens that are not. Again, this will change, and there are crossovers, and I'm sure someone will take offense at this generalization. If that's the case, this is probably a good indication that this series is not for you. Building blocks. There are three basic building blocks when it comes to blockchains: tokens, contracts, and identity. These are important when conceptualizing a blockchain application. Before we jump in, though, let's pin a simple definition of what the underlying blockchain or shared ledger is. A shared ledger uses cryptography that is trusted by multiple parties to authentically represent tokens or assets of value that can be owned by accounts belonging to the parties that trust it. Wow, that's a mouthful, and we can get way more complicated. But for all intents and purposes, this definition of a ledger that represents a shared truth or is really good at establishing authenticity using cryptography is the only thing you really need to understand at this point to be able to envision what you might be able to do with it. Tokens, monopoly and bearer instruments. Tokens are representations of something. Think about the board game Monopoly. The whole game is practically all about tokens. Well, you have the game piece that each player chooses to represent themselves. You also have the property cards a player purchases. Oh, and don't forget the money. The players earn and use to purchase those properties, and the get out of jail free card a player can draw when they get into trouble. Each of those things represents a token, but they're not the same type of token. A game piece represents a player or, say, an identity or account. The money represents, well, physical money, and the property cards represent land titles or deeds. Note the property cards also contain details like rents or fees, which represent contracts, which we'll cover later. In the Monopoly game, the money and property cards are bearer instruments. meaning a player can be the owner of money or property, no strings attached, which is to say, when the game is over, no record is kept of who previously owned the property or held that particular $500 bill. So a bearer instrument is said to be anonymously sold or redeemed. Note, we're using the term bearer instrument generally to describe the concept, not describe actual financial instruments. So you know the saying, possession is a 90% of the law. Well, that means if you possess or bear the instrument, say $1, you are the owner and can do anything you want to with it. Physical money in your hand, pocket, etc., is the kind of bearer instrument. Historically, so were some stocks, bonds, and titles as proof of asset ownership. These are pretty scarce today for numerous reasons, which we'll get into later. So, digital tokens are not generally bearer instruments. In fact, by default, they're anything but. A blockchain token has a full history or lineage that can be tracked back to its origin. This level of scrupulous record keeping makes it difficult to hide if your account number becomes known. Anyway, discussing the history of bearer instruments is really useful in understanding how tokens can represent something of value. A digital token can represent some asset of tangible value, which is owned by another token that usually represents an identity or an account. Translation: the dog owns Park Avenue, which means if you're the player who chose the dog, you should have the Park Avenue property card on your side of the board. Lucky you.